Hey y'all, Daniel from Iron Mend here. First of all, I want to say I am so grateful you're spending time with me today and this continued support on all of my videos, my Instagram videos, the reels, the long form videos, and just our website. The engagement has been phenomenal. And I just want to say thank you so much. You're helping me live my dream. Although it doesn't look like we're doing well, even if two people tune in a week, I'm happy. With that being said, YouTube, whatever medium this is going to be shared on, I am not a doctor. I am not giving medical advice. Everything I say in this video is strictly for education and entertainment and should not be used as a practical guide to administer any sort of compound ever. Anything I say, take it for what it is. It is looking at research and not giving medical direction. Awesome. Now that that's out of the way, we are talking about one of my favorite peptides, SS-31, a mitochondrial derived peptide. Similar family as MOTS, as I believe I covered in my first video, and together, not taken together at the same time, but sequentially, there has been tons of anecdotal reports that this is a game changer. And I can tell you right now, I do feel the effects. I do research these compounds, and the hype is definitely real and promising. But without further ado, I decided to actually not look downward, which I'm doing right now. I formulated all of the research that was relevant to this peptide, and I put it together in a document, and I want to make sure that you can see it. I think a lot of people learn better visually, and I don't want to be the guy that's throwing out terms that don't make sense, and I'm just kind of going on tangents that aren't relevant or are difficult to understand. So this is the way I'm going to do these videos now. I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm just going to explain what we're looking at. So bear with me, please, while I pull this up. Alrighty, hopefully it says it's sharing on my side. Alrighty, I'm gonna have confidence in Zoom and hopefully this is working out for me. But what is SS-31? Well, compared to every single other peptide that I've covered so far, this one actually has tons of clinical research and it actually has an FDA approval, and the pharmaceutical name for it is Elamipretide, although also previously called MTP-131 or Bendavia. I haven't seen those used in clinical settings, but Elamipretide is extremely relevant, and we'll get on here on the right side what it was actually used for. And before I expand on the background of the peptide, the summary, whenever something has FDA approval, it means that there has been research and there's been funding to treat a certain condition. By extension, I also want to tie this into WADA and USADA, because these are all performance enhancing compounds and I want all relevant parties to be mentioned. There's something called the TUE in WADA and USADA, therapeutic use exemption. What that mainly is if you do have one of these conditions, you could actually file a claim through those doping parties, or anti-doping parties, I should say. And depending on documentation on the use case, that TUE could be approved only through FDA approved compounds, from my understanding, because there is no FDA approval for the other peptides I covered. This one does have FDA approval, so it could be used as a TUE if you do have what we're going to cover here on the right. But about SS-31 itself, it's actually a tiny peptide in terms of the amino acids sequenced together. It's only four. A lot of them we see upwards of 13. This one is just four, which is actually crazy to me because it does so much. But it was actually discovered by accident while researchers were developing opioid receptor agonists. While it makes it mechanistically, I always botch that word, distinct from almost every other peptide in this space, especially the ones that I cover, it doesn't work through a cell surface receptor at all. It's designed to cross actually directly into cells and concentrate inside the mitochondria. So whenever we talk about peptides and what they do, a lot of people like to give this description that they are giving directions, that they are supporting endogenous processes, which is true. It definitely is true. And the way to to describe SS-31, it's not doing that. It's actually going in and getting its toolbox, its wrench, its screwdrivers, and it's fixing these mitochondria itself at a base level. That's what we researched it, and that's what the efficiency has been shown in the literature and the research, that it is not providing direct instructions like, hey, you go here, you do this. It says, move out of the way, guys. I got this. I'm going to fix this. So we're going to look at the mechanism pathway. Cell permeable peptide enters the cell. That's SS-31. It binds to cardiolipin. It's basically the inner mitochondrial membrane. If you've ever heard of cardiolipin, it's basically what gives the integrity of the mitochondria and helps it efficiently run. And it basically stabilizes the actual structure and improves electron transport chain efficiency. I'll get into that, what that actually looks like, but basically it improves the output and the energy production of your mitochondria. So in theory, a lot of people say it gives you energy, makes you feel energized. I didn't feel any difference when I was taking it, but we'll go into what the after effects were when paired with the whole longevity protocol and why I believe it absolutely works. We're gonna do our daily video drink of water. But the reason why it's relevant right here, why it's highlighted, I wanted to highlight this because cardiolipin is a phospholipid, which is found almost exclusively directly in the inner mitochondrial membrane. It's essential for the proper folding of the membrane into cristae and for the function of the protein complexes, that generate ATP. That's energy. SS-31 partitions itself into the membrane interfacial region with high affinity for cardiolipin. That just means it's highly attracted and seeks out cardiolipin. High affinity just means it is magnetized to it, drawn to it, modulating the membrane surface, electrostatics. This binding is now understood to be the central mechanism rather than the simple antioxidant activity as originally theorized. So through the research, through the clinical trials, we found out that the primary mechanism was actually binding to the cardiolipin as this peptide enters the system. So the secondary effects are there, but this is what SS-31 does. It's what it's known for. So this is the citation. I always leave all my citations in the description. All relevant parties that I mentioned here will be left in the description as well, but that's just rehashing what we covered here. So why is this different? Well, because unlike most peptides discussed online that you're seeing on Reels, on YouTube Shorts, what have you, Elamipretide actually has a very well documented clinical history that not a lot of peptides do. So it's been in human trials. The year MOTS was actually discovered, 2015. Very coincidental. And has multiple completed phase 2 trials across several diseases, which is freaking awesome, which means I got a ton of information for this video. And as of late 2025, actual FDA approval. So the FDA approval came a while after the clinical trials, which is why you see the FDA and these governing parties take so long to bring these things to market in terms of labeling it pharmaceutically. These things just take time. That's how the government is. Not going to comment on that. I enjoy my life, so we'll leave it at that. But that gives us a rare opportunity to show what a peptide's real path is through the clinical trial system, what it looks like basically getting approved. What if it doesn't get approved? That's basically what we saw with SS-31. So we have one approval, two high-profile misses. What does that mean? Well, this is the most important framing for this video because elamipretide is not a peptide with no human data, as I always mention. It's a peptide with real mixed clinical trial track record across multiple diseases, which is freaking awesome because a lot of times we see most pharmaceuticals for one disease or one use case. Elamipretide was actually experimented with for multiple conditions. So the only FDA approval it has is for a syndrome called the Barth syndrome. Basically, the TASPOWER trial, I'm not going to say the code, accelerated approval granted in 2025 against Forzinity, under brand name Forzinity. It's an injectable as well. Improved knee extensor muscle strength as an intermediate endpoint, which basically means that the people with Barth syndrome, which it's a mitochondrial disease, your mitochondria are just not efficient and you feel sluggish, you feel groggy, you just don't have the energy reserves or the mitochondria is not outputting ATP as efficiently as it could. So with elamipretide, this improvement This was improved significantly with a 6-minute walk test, which is awesome, basically gauging the knee pain, the efficiency, the trial's primary endpoint, and the FDA's advisory committee concluded that it was effective for improving that mitochondrial efficiency through Barth syndrome, if used correctly. So final accelerated approval, as we mentioned, landed in 2025, and this is actually resubmitted after initial rejection. These two I'm going to cover because I found out that these were actually looked at for FDA approval, but did not end up getting it. For heart failure, just it did not significantly improve specifically the left ventricle and systolic volume versus the placebo, which I think is a disservice to the actual compound itself because why are we only assessing one aspect of the heart? Why don't we look at cardiac output through a myriad of experiments rather than isolate it to left ventricle and systolic volume? I think that's just not relevant to what the compound does. I think any compound that is that hyper-specific that has that use case, it's not even going to sell well. So why even test it for that use case? Just wanted to highlight that as well. And then for geographic atrophy, this one is more relevant to the systemic part. But in the phase 2 trial, we missed primary endpoints for visual acuity and GA lesion progression through a subgroup of 15% of patients. They showed meaningful vision improvement at week 48, but not enough to say this is really a game breaker. So those two use cases were I think not correctly experimented with. And I'm not an expert, but I think that you're looking at the wrong metrics in order to gain approval for this kind of compound. Barth syndrome, absolutely relevant. I think other mitochondrial diseases, even, Epstein-Barr virus or any sort of a virus like that, I think Elamipretide does have a relevant use case in terms of repairing any sort of systemic virus like that. That's just my opinion. Don't take my word for it. But this is basically the baseline and what we saw with the Elamipretide on the TAS power trial with the Barth syndrome. We basically see the relative knee extensor strength. It was actually almost up 50%. It was up 45% with the adjusted dose with the Elamipretide. So definitely some relevant improvements, and it gained FDA approval because of that. So this is going to be, yeah, that's the basically the end there. But very long road to approval. Started in 2015 and took 10 years to get approved. Typically, with concurrent funding and active experimentation, it's a regular timeline. Typically, we see drugs get approved in 5, 6 years, right? 6, 7, maybe. Didn't mean to do the meme there, but not the case for the vaccine. I wouldn't kill myself. But we have the first in human phase 1 trials under MTP-131. It's still the same compound, just labeled under a different pharmaceutical. And then we have the TAS power trial in 2017. That was a double placebo. Yeah, that one actually ran 168 weeks. I did not know that. But this is the most relevant part right here. Stealth Biotherapeutic submits its first new drug application, which, by the way, anytime you do want to label the compound, or at least take the compound to market, you have to submit an NDA every single time after a clinical trial. So that's basically the process. Fund the trials, get the data, then submit the NDA. And obviously, you need some backing from either an investor or these pharmaceuticals just have a boatload of cash to just throw at these compounds. So anytime you see something like a brand name, let's do what do we got around here? Actually, I don't want to show my address. Um, I just have modafinil here, right? Modafinil is the name of the compound, but if we want to take it to market and have, I don't want to say a monopoly over it, we would just come up with a name like True Trunera, right? It's modafinil, but we would have to submit the NDA and then wait for approval, right? Eventually, 2025. Not on safety grounds. They basically left an extended review, just requesting more safety data, as the FDA always does, which I do believe is a good service to the public. No adverse effects should ever be reported and then, not documented. So I think that's relevant. But got approved, which is brilliant. You could get this if you have Barth syndrome, which is less than 1% of the population. You could get this approved for a prescription, but compounding pharmacies make it actively. So no need to go to Forzinity or Elamipretide. But what do we actually know about the risk? Um, it's safe, right? We actually have regulated case data, which was reviewed, which was foolproof, which actually had multiple participants over a long duration. So we have the three key metrics that would actually make this a a good decision for a doctor to really review and prescribe. We have long-term data, we have a high population that use the compound, and we have the approval from multiple parties. So that's it's a relevant compound and it's safe, right? So not relevant, excuse me. It's a safe and effective compound through literature. So I think that's the lens that you should be looking at this from. So the FDA's review team found Elamipretide was well tolerated across its clinical program, with injection site reactions as the most commonly reported adverse event. And absolutely testify to this. Anytime I pinned SS-31, and I'm not a type of guy to welt, to mitochondrial peptides. MOTS-c, I don't welt at all. SS-31, I always got the itchiest welts every time, even when I was doing very low doses. But we don't have any single adverse effect. No anaphylaxis, no any sort of immediate reaction in terms of systemic inflammation that we know, or histaminic reactions across the whole body, which is brilliant. So it's actually one of the cleaner safety pictures in the peptide space, not because the marketing says so, like everyone labeled this as just like the mitochondrial repair peptide, which it is, but it's because the conclusion of the actual FDA review has literature and has real data behind this. So don't just like take this stuff after you see an Instagram video and then, you expect to feel like the man and then get married the next week. No, I mean, there's tons of caveats with any sort of compound that you inject in your body. But if I want you to take away a couple things from this video, I'll start with this. Do not start any single compound without getting a baseline blood panel. And I can put in what you need in the description, or you can just shoot me a message on Instagram, IronMed, with a zero, and I respond to basically everyone. Actually, I think they took away my DMs, but yeah, you can book online with us at ironmedllc.com. But what I would say is number one, do a baseline blood panel, and number two, before you start any single compound, get your CRP below 1. I know it ties into the first one, but if you get your inflammation, and there's tons of metrics you obviously need to improve after you have your hormones optimized, lipid panel, whatever. If you have inflammation at 1, it means that there is no systemic factors that are going to limit this peptide's effect. That's not medical advice. That's just from what I've seen in research. The lower your inflammation is, the easier it is for your body to process these compounds and have the most beneficial reactions to them. Let me stop sharing my screen here. I don't know if it's sharing. All right, whatever. All right, hopefully stop sharing. But thank you so much for watching this video. Check us out at ironmedllc.com. We are trying to get new doctors on board so we can improve our website prices, but we hire doctors, we work with compounding pharmacies. I see a lot of people calling me greedy, what have you. But I just posted on my Instagram that a research brand had fentanyl in their vials. So I don't care how much it costs in terms of using it for myself. I value my health. I want to look good. I want to feel good. And I want my impact in the world to be good. There was a gentleman who was commenting on my Instagram, and typically I don't get rattled, nor was I rattled, but I was concerned that the monetary aspect of this market was the primary indicator of his value. So you're just saying I made 6,500 today on Retatrutide, 20 milligram vials. I was like, okay, is that what you feel good about? Is that what you're going to take to the grave and feel like you're the man about? Or do you actually want to change people's lives? I want to change people's lives. I'm making videos like this. I'm not afraid to have my face out there. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want to make sure that I'm providing real value, that I'm changing people's lives. I just stopped the sharing, that I'm changing people's lives and that I am fully confident in what we put out there. And that's what I'm doing every day. So we're doing our best, but I appreciate you spending the time with me, and I hope you learned something new. Thanks. Have a great day.